Hi, and welcome to 8 WattWatcher's electricity monitoring device case studies for strata apartment buildings. WattBlock has been working with WattWatchers, the makers of the Auditor series of electricity monitoring devices, which are being rolled out under the My Energy Marketplace program funded by the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, or ARENA. So why would you install an electricity monitoring device in a strata building, even if it's subsidized by the federal government? Well, first of all, you could use it to understand the electrical equipment that's running in the building and improve energy efficiency. Sometimes you can reduce the time that different pieces of machinery operate, the running hours, or just put them in a better window where you may not pay as much for electricity. Secondly, you could prepare for a future solar system or monitor the performance of an existing solar system. And we've got an example case study at the end that's doing that. You can prepare for electric vehicle charging or submeter the consumption of electric vehicle charges. You can check that your electricity meter isn't faulty and that you aren't losing out due to estimated meter reads. You could submeter a common area heat pump, allowing you to exclude this electricity from a neighbour's for apartment buildings rating. You could prepare for batteries and joining a virtual power plant program. You may be able to identify faulty equipment early. Sometimes it creates an unusual spike in the graph, and you might be able to catch this faulty equipment early and fix it, saving thousands of dollars on peak demand or capacity charges. So let's have a look at the case studies. The first one is Harbour Lights at 102 Alfred Street in Milsons Point. This is a building that was considering retiring an aging central air conditioning plant and also preparing for introduction of electric vehicle charge points. And they were able to give the data and the login to the WattWatchers system to an EV charging company to help in quoting for their building. If we move up to Grandview Apartments, they're also down there at Milsons Point, and they had an issue with their common area smart meter. They weren't convinced that they were being billed correctly, and by putting a WattWatchers device next to it and measuring electricity independently, they were able to validate whether their smart meter was operating correctly. If we move over to 30 Morton Street in Wollstonecraft, this is an apartment complex that's preparing to install an Illume solar sharing system for the individual apartments. So they installed the WattWatchers device with 3 channels on the aggregate of the apartments in this complex and three channels on the common area meter. But they don't have a lot of consumption on their common area meter. If we move up to Regency Park at 267 Miller Street, North Sydney, this building was investigating whether they could replace an aging Raypak gas hot water system with an electric heat pump system. Also at this building, they used all 6 channels of the WattWatchers device. So they had 3 on the aggregate consumption of the apartments and 3 on the common area meter. We jump over to 67 Helen Street in Lane Cove, a participant in the Lane Cove Greener Apartments project. This building was interested in measuring the common area electricity meter in advance of some people potentially purchasing electric vehicles in the building. Also, they may look at solar in the future, but there's a little bit of shading that doesn't make it a terrific candidate for solar. If we go to the Galleria in Woolloomooloo, this building is looking at doing a large-scale solar system on its roof. They've also decommissioned a central air conditioning unit, and they've been on this energy saving journey for a number of years since joining the City of Sydney Ratings and Assessment Grant Program. A couple of different purposes for WattWatchers here. Unfortunately, a bit more expensive to install because they needed the Rogowski coils. And in some of the buildings, you also need to pay for an extra 3G, 4G antenna. to be able to get 3G or 4G reception, from the street down into the switch room. If we jump over to here at 8 to 10 Billiard Street in Elizabeth Bay, Robert knows he can't do much in terms of a solar system there, but Watt Watchers, used for energy efficiency and also electric vehicle charging is on the agenda. And then if we go to Zinc at 30 Garden Street in Alexandria, we're going to have a little more detailed case study from Nathan Haig at this building. They've just recently put in the Watt Watchers devices, but wished that they put them in earlier on. So I hope you've enjoyed 8 different Watt Watchers in strata apartment buildings case studies.
Where we got a Watt Watchers device, which essentially allows us to monitor major parts of the building at a circuit level. So is it ventilation? Is it garage lighting? Is it common area lighting? Is it the lift? So we can see, and water pumps, etc. So you can see how different devices are using electricity at different times, which allows further tuning and enhancing. So then that was basically allowed us to say, okay, well, we've tuned up the building again. We've optimized it as far as we think we can go this time. Solar phase 2, which is where we are now. And we're also now monitoring, we've got an additional Watt Watchers device, which looks at the whole of the building level. So we can see what the whole of the building is using, which is basically setting us up for, that's a solar system. Okay, just in case you're wondering what we're still talking about, it's not chess anymore, we're back into solar. You've heard me mention Watt Watchers a couple of times. I think that would have been fabulous if I'd had that, a number of years ago, because it really focuses your efforts on certain things and really allows you to focus on what you can reduce your consumption to start with before you put solar on there. There's a lot of good stuff that we did, but I think that would have expedited some of that process.